I never thought the woman I trusted most would walk away without a word. I was sitting in the living room that morning, coffee still hot in my mug, staring at the suitcase by the door like it had betrayed me. We were supposed to leave for Paris in a few hours, and I kept checking my watch, thinking maybe she'd just run late. But something felt off. The way the apartment was too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I remembered the sound of her laughter last night, light and careless, and now it felt strange, distant, almost foreign. I ran a hand over my face and laughed at myself. A weak, bitter laugh, thinking how ridiculous it was to spend $35,000 on a dream trip when the dream itself was crumbling right under my nose. I walked into the kitchen, hoping she'd be there making that ridiculous cinnamon toast she loves, and found the note instead. A few scribbled lines, cold and neat, telling me she needed space, that she hadn't been happy for a while, and that maybe this Christmas was the right time to end things. I dropped the note, and the mug slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. The smell of spilled coffee filled the room like smoke after a fire, bitter, acrid, impossible to ignore. I sank onto the couch, my chest tight, staring at the ceiling like it might give me answers if I just looked long enough. I couldn't stop thinking about all the little moments I'd missed, the quiet sighs, the glances she'd given her phone, the jokes that never reached me. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I realized that maybe I'd been living in a fantasy, thinking love could be measured in trips and gifts. I laughed again, quieter this time, and it felt a little like surviving. Christmas was coming, the world outside covered in snow, sparkling lights mocking me. But I had no choice but to breathe, to wait, and figure out how to face the day without losing what little dignity I had left. I spent the next few hours moving through the apartment like a ghost. I'd pick something up, stare at it and put it down again, over and over, like maybe if I touched it enough, it would make sense. Her sweater still hung on the back of a chair, faintly smelling like her perfume, that mix of vanilla and something floral that used to make me smile. I touched it once, then pulled my hand back, feeling stupid for thinking a smell could fix anything. My phone kept buzzing, but I didn't answer. I knew it was her, or maybe a friend calling to check in, and I couldn't face either. I found myself walking to the bedroom, opening drawers I didn't need to see. Everything was in its place, neat and ordinary, like she'd left no trace of the chaos I felt inside. I remember a quiet laugh escaping me when I found a pair of socks she'd bought that I hated, the ones she swore were practical. Even now, that little memory made the ache in my chest twist. I tried calling her, then texting, asking if we could talk, but the silence on the other end was louder than any words could be. I sat on the edge of the bed, hands pressed to my face, thinking about last Christmas, how we'd baked cookies, laughed at old movies, and promised each other that nothing would ever break us. That promise felt like it belonged to someone else now. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the hum of the heater, the faint sound of traffic outside, wondering how something that felt so solid could vanish so fast. And somewhere between disbelief and anger, I realized I was starting to understand a truth I didn't want to face. Sometimes the people you love the most can leave you standing in a room full of memories, and there's no instruction manual for surviving that. By the time friends and family started calling, I was already numb. "Are you okay, man?" my buddy Joe asked, his voice cautious over the phone. I told him I was fine, and maybe I even sounded fine, but I could feel the hollowness under every word. My sister stopped by with a casserole, and that worried look she always gets when she thinks I can't handle life on my own. I made coffee for both of us, trying to act normal, and we sat in the kitchen, the kind of silence that isn't comfortable but necessary. She asked questions I didn't have answers for. Did she really mean it? Was there someone else? And I just shook my head, staring at the steam rising from my mug. I kept thinking about the note again. The way her handwriting had always been neat, precise, almost too perfect, like she could control the chaos of everything else, including me. I remember muttering to myself, "Well, that's one way to ruin Christmas," and I actually laughed, even though it hurt like hell. I started going through the motions of packing, trying to imagine what to do with the tickets, the hotel reservations, the fancy dinners we'd planned, all of it now meaningless. Somewhere in the middle of that chaos, a strange sense of quiet strength began to seep in. I realized I didn't need to chase after what was already gone. It stung, sure, like a punch you didn't see coming, but there was dignity in stepping back. I poured another cup of coffee, leaned against the counter, and let myself feel the mix of heartbreak and relief at the same time. I knew this was just the beginning of understanding what love really costs when it's built on shaky ground, and for the first time, I started to see that maybe losing her wasn't the end of the story. Maybe it was the start of one I could finally write for myself. I remember the moment it hit me like a punch I didn't see coming. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of travel brochures we'd left open, imagining the streets of Paris we'd never walk, when my phone buzzed with a message from her. I didn't even want to look, but I did. It was short, too short. "I'm sorry, I need to do this." That was it. No explanation, no warmth, just the cold text that ended everything I thought we had. I dropped the phone, and it slid across the floor with a tiny, pathetic clatter. I just sat there, hands pressed to my face, feeling something inside me fracture in slow motion. I could hear the faint hum of the heater, the clink of my mug against the counter when I set it down too hard, and the quiet street outside that carried on like nothing had changed. I thought about calling her, shouting, begging, or at least demanding a conversation, but I didn't. Instead, I got up, grabbed my jacket, and walked outside. The snow was fresh, crunchy under my boots, and the cold hit my face like reality itself had decided to slap me awake. I walked without direction, letting the silence and the cold fill me, letting the hurt settle into something almost like clarity. Somewhere along the way, I realized the trip didn't matter. The money, the flights, the fancy hotels, none of it could buy back trust or undo the betrayal. I laughed quietly to myself, a little bitter, a little ironic, thinking about how I'd been so proud of the plans we made. I knew then that I had a choice. I could chase what was already gone, or I could stand up, let go, and try to find a way to honor myself in the mess. That realization was sharp and painful, but also freeing. The snow kept falling, soft and relentless, and for the first time that day, I felt like I could breathe without her shadow over me. The days after that were strange, like I was moving through a world that hadn't noticed the earthquake in my life. I kept expecting her to come back through the door, suitcase in hand, laughing like nothing had happened. She didn't. I called her once, my voice tight, shaky. "Can we talk?" I asked. Silence, just the faint hiss of the line. I hung up, sank onto the couch, and stared at the carpet like it had the answers. Friends stopped by, unsure if they should stay or leave, and I didn't blame them. Joe tried to make me laugh, telling me about a cat stuck in a Christmas tree at his sister's house. I smiled, really smiled, for the first time in days. It felt absurd that a story about a cat could cut through this fog, but it did, just a little. My sister brought over lasagna and tried to fill the silence with chatter, and I let her, because even small normal things were comforting. I spent hours walking the streets, letting the cold hit my face, listening to the crunch of snow under my boots. It was like the world was moving, indifferent, and I was learning to move too. I thought about all the things I'd done wrong, the moments I'd ignored, the signs I'd missed. I cursed myself quietly, then laughed at how dramatic I was being, alone, in a hoodie, talking to the wind. But that absurdity, that small irony, was part of surviving. I was learning that heartbreak wasn't just pain, it was clarity too, and maybe, just maybe, the first step toward something better. By the time the snow started melting and the streets looked less like a Christmas card and more like real life, I began to feel something I hadn't in weeks: quiet. I'd sit in the apartment, sometimes just staring out the window, watching people pass by, couples bundled up,